Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Today, we're going to finish up the new Hunger Games movie. And this is the part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, you're going to want to go back and look at it. But we left off at the Hunger Games firmament bombing. And, oh my gosh, a bird just ran into the window. Poor guy. I think he's okay, though. He's sitting on the chair out here. But anyway, we left off at the firmament bombing, where a third of the angels fell. And we surmise that that meant the third of the tributes, right? There were 4 out of the 12 that died in the bombing. And at that point, we will learn that the only one who got out was Marcus. Now, Marcus was hunted in the streets, and later they crucified him, but the rest of them were captured. Let's take a look here.
Girl, right, great. 11.
Now, at this point, it hit me. Marcus and Brandy. Now, this is Brandy that you saw here. This is when they were captured inside the cage. And she was actually the first tribute to die when she was in the cage. And she broke a bottle here and stabbed her mentor in the neck, because her mentor was like messing with her, like withholding food and toying with her and mocking her behind the cage. And then it hit me. I was like, okay, Brandy and Marcus. What does that represent? The brand and the mark.
Marcus got out. He's the only one. Peacekeepers are hunting him in the streets, but at least he has a better chance out there than he would tomorrow.
Now, next, to confirm the whole firmament metaphor, because the arena is essentially the earth with the firmament above it, Snow, he finds a hole in the floor of the firmament, and this hole has to be the pit, and it leads underground into these underground tunnels, and he basically tries to get Lucy, which, remember, Lucy is the Eve character. He tries to get her to go down into the pit to escape when the games begin. Watch.
There's a hole down in the floor. With that bell ring, you ignore the weapons in the middle and you run as fast as you can for that hole. And you find a place to hide down below. That bell rings, you can't trust anyone, not even Jessup.
Now, the subterranean tunnels have to represent hell, the hell beneath earth, or the lower waters. Her and Jessup run for the hole and jump inside.
We've gone underground very quickly, but we're prepared for this. What you're seeing now is a live... High assault from the other side. Kids zeroing in on Lucy Gray.
Now, something happens because Jessup, remember, he was bit in the neck by a bat. And apparently he develops rabies. You're going to hear rabies. You're going to hear the flu. It's all connected.
What have you done to her?
Call cut the feet. Tributes kill you in here, she's just gonna say you died of the flu. Listen, what does he think?
Something's wrong. He wouldn't turn on her like this.
Just go after Lucy Gray.
Stop running!
I think it's rabies.
That bite from that train.
Send him water.
Slave district. Folding in themselves.
Wait, look. Phone. Rabies, it makes you afraid of water. Send him a drone.
Scared.
Now, he got the rabies on the train from a bat. I've always told you the trains represent serpents, don't they? So, you got a double whammy there. The serpent train tracks and the bat gives him rabies. And then you notice this theme of flu as well, because it will all be connected as we go into these last days.
Yes. Away from her.
Now remember, at the beginning of this decode, we mentioned Marcus and Brandy, the Mark and the Brand. And this is Marcus. They actually catch him, and he ends up being crucified. Now, Jesus, when he was crucified, he absolved the curse of the mark, didn't he? How did he do that? He absolved the curse of the mark on mankind by carrying the curse in the orientation of the shape of the letter X. Because when you take a cross and you carry it on your back, it looks like an X when you're going up a hill. And then when he was crucified, he turned the curse upright into a cross. The cross orientation. And that released the curse. Now, if you look at a cross shape, it's actually an unfolded cube. Now, I wasn't the one who discovered that. Someone else had observed that a long time ago, that when you take a cube and you cut it open, it looks like a cross. So essentially what he did was he unfolded the hex on humanity. How did he do that? Through belief in him. Now, why do we say he unfolded the hex? Well, a cube in its three-dimensional image is a hexagram or hexagon, and that's the hex on humanity. Then we get this weird speck and beam symbolism. Now, this is nuts. I was not expecting to find this, but this thing that Marcus is hanging on is a beam, and they'll say that here in a second. Let's keep watching. Now, what's going on right here? Well, Lucy is contaminating the water of her opponents with rat poison because they've chased her into a duct. And this is where we get the speck and beam symbolism. Lucy's poisoning their water with the rat poison, and then she goes and hides inside of an air duct. Now, the air duct looks like an iris of your eye. And it's not really an air duct, it's a tear duct, because you're going to see Lucy start to cry inside of this air duct. So, tears inside the duct. Let's keep watching here.
Get this water into a pile, lumberjack.
And then when you're done, you two can watch that beam while we get your little friend from back home up there.
See, she says to watch that beam. And this is where they go up and attack the girl that you saw them attacking. So, we've got beams, we've got tear ducts. Now, an unintended tribute drinks the poison water and she dies. It wasn't the intended person that Lucy wanted to kill with the rat poison, but it ended up happening that way. Now, every time a tribute dies, they get X'd out. And this is why we have all this X symbolism. Because this is what it's about. It's about Xing us out. Make no mistake. Let's keep watching here.
Lynn Wolby and Lucy Gray.
So here is Lucy inside the tear duct, or the air duct, which looks like an iris. And she sheds tears in here because of the unintended victim of her rat poison in the water. Then she's tracked by the other bad tributes. And they know that she's in the duct. And so they are about to spear her through the duct. So what does she do? She takes the last specks of the rat poison, and she pours them down into the eye of one of her opponents. Of course he dies, and there you just saw the speck and beam in the eye symbolism right out of the Bible. Unbelievable how much these people follow the biblical storylines. The speck and the beam. So, what were they doing? They were watching the beam right? Instead of watching the speck. And the speck is what kills them. Now, what is the intention of the enemy to seed in these stories, these biblical themes? Well, as we discovered a couple shows ago, he does this to rewrite the Bible. He's trying to neutralize the power of these stories that are in the Bible. And he's trying to rewrite them in his image. And so obviously, how many people do you think picked up on the speck and the beam? Probably not many. Probably just the people on this channel, right? And once I explain it to you, you clearly see it. But a lot of people would never have picked up on this because it's a little bit spread out in the storyline. But all the components are there. The speck of rat poison in the eye that kills him, the beam that they were watching when they should have been watching the speck, which is exactly what the Bible says, her inside the tear duct, the air duct, and shedding tears for the unintended victim who drank the rat poison water. Now, of course, rat poison makes you bleed from the inside out. It's essentially the opposite of blood clotting, isn't it? So all of this is probably starting to sound familiar because it's all happening right now. People clotting up and dropping dead all around us in plain sight. And nobody realizes what's going on. Now, we've been on this rat poison trail for some time, haven't we? Because rat poison is star poison backwards. Rats is star backwards. And so this is what they really want to do. They want to basically poison us all. Let's keep watching here.
Did Coral do something to trees?
Then enters the fiery serpents. Now, this is another biblical story that we'll cover. Because remember, after the Israelites in the Old Testament escaped through the Exodus from Egypt, they began worshiping the golden calf, didn't they? And what did God do? He punished them with fiery serpents. Now, there's different interpretations of what that might mean. But what we do know is they must have been very colorful, right? So they show us these rainbow serpents. And these serpents were genetically modified, genetically engineered, and were supposed to kill all the rest of the tributes in the Hunger Games. They're actually created, these fire serpents were created by the game master to basically annihilate the rest of them. Let's take a look here.
It's not gonna be good.
Wouldn't it be fun if it was candy?
So the rainbow serpents kill most of the rest of the tributes. The only one that's left, of course, is Lucy. Now, did any of you guys catch Molech? Let me back it up for you. Molech is actually part of the arena. Here it is, right here. The eyes of Molech. One there and one there. What are you talking about, Casey? Well, watch this. This is the star spin of the Milky Way. Of the stars, actually. The Milky Way's in here. But this is a time-lapse panoramic view of what the sky looks like on the horizon. And there you see the very same two arches. The rest of the eye is below the horizon. But this is what the eyes of Molech are in the night sky. Let's see, there's another image in here. This is what it looks like at the equator with time-lapse photography. Now, what does all this mean? Well, obviously God didn't create this way. We're in some kind of an alteration of the truth, aren't we? Now, we do know that the sun and the moon follow a figure-8 pattern in the sky. And maybe that's part of how creation was altered after the fall of man. But there you can see almost that it could form a figure-8 as well. and the stars follow the same pattern in the night sky. Again, this is called time-lapse panoramic view. Now, for those of you that follow the channel, we've covered this at length very early on in the channel, back in 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. We had discovered this, and we're trying to make sense of it, like what does it mean? But here you see that this essentially is this. It's just stuck, it's frozen. But this is the star spin in the night sky with a giant eye there of Molech and a giant eye here of Molech. Now, we also had found out that Molech is MLK in the Hebrew language, or MLC, because there are no vowels. And so what you have is MLK is milk. And this is why they named it the Milky Way. And we found out that the Milky Way is a giant serpent in the sky eating its own tail. So maybe that is the gash of sin stained against the firmament. It could also be what's left over of a third of the stars falling from the sky, a third of the fallen angels from heaven. Maybe he left a giant gash in creation, and that's what we're seeing up there. I mean, there's different interpretations of this, but on a spiritual level, I think we're over the target with this. So there's Molech right there, the eyes of Molech, the top of his eyes anyway, right there in the arena. Now let's go back here into the chat, see what you guys are up to. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Now, as I said, the snakes kill everybody but Lucy, because basically Snow interfered and he tainted the snakes with her scent before they were released. And so the snakes recognized her. So when they came up to her, she doesn't die. So all the way back to the Bible, she shall not surely die. That was the first lie, right? That Satan told Eve.
It's not going to be good. Work. Wouldn't it be funny if it was candy? Lead to gray.
All colors lead to gray. So that kind of confirms our original decode of her name, right? Lucy Gray. Because we said that gray is pretty much the absence of color. So to everyone else observing, it appears as though the reason why the snakes aren't biting her is because she's singing. They don't know that Snow had interfered and dropped her handkerchief into the pit of snakes so that they would recognize her scent and not bite her. So they all think that it's this frequency, the frequency of her voice, that is stopping the snakes from biting her. So there's that sound element again, right? Now, of course, Lucy wins the final battle. And what do? Here's pure blasphemy right here. Watch. They release the doves. Now, of course, doves represent the Holy Spirit, right? That's in the Bible. And so what's that about? Well, it's obvious blasphemy. He releases the doves into the air. And at this point, Snow gets caught. They realize that he cheated to help Lucy, and he wasn't supposed to. So he gets exiled to one of the districts as a peacekeeper. So he's like an enforcer. He becomes an enforcer in one of these districts. And of course, he and Lucy meet back up, and they fall in love.
Yet some maintain that to this day.
Now, of course, Lucy is obsessed with snakes. So there's your huge clue right there that something is not right. But remember, she's the Eve archetype, but she's being seduced by the serpent. which is Snow, who represents Lucifer. Now, as they start to fall in love, they realize that something's wrong. They realize that there's a divide between them, between the wilderness and Egypt. And that's always been the divide, hasn't it? Lucifer wants us in Egypt, with the tall skyscrapers in the cities, in what he calls civilization. And God knows that we're supposed to be in the wilderness to be closest to him. So there's this thing between nature and civilization. Eve in the wilderness, in the garden, and Lucifer in Egypt. Watch.
That you may see sweet Lucy Gray on the lonesome wild.
I've never seen those birds before.
Mockingjays.
I hope you'll come back with me.
Capital's not for me.
At least it's civilized. Has order.
The Hunger Games are order. Would you really go back, though? If you could? To the capital?
You have to. It's where I belong.
They're just too.
Now, you heard her mention mockingjays. And in the film, basically, the mockingjay represents the feathered serpent who speaks. These are the mockingjays. And they're basically all-seeing eyes for the capital. They're spy birds. And they spy by voice recording rebellion plots and things like this. And then they fly back to the capital, or they're transported back to the capital. But I think really these represent the feathered serpent. Watch.
You could? To the capital?
You have to. It's where I belong.
They're just too. Anybody else would do for you. The leader, Spurs, he wants to get his sister Lil out of jail.
My old self. I killed him so I could come with you.
So Lucy and Snow run away together into the wilderness, and he basically compromises. He's like, okay, I don't need to go back to the capital. I'll just come with you back to the garden. And we know that the fallen angels fell to be with the seed of the woman, right? They gave up their heavenly estate for an earthly one. And that's what Snow's explaining here. He's saying that he died in his former self to be here with her. Let's listen to that again. It's important.
My old self. I killed him so I could come with you.
Now, at this point, Lucy starts acting really weird, and she betrays Snow. Even though Snow is the one that saved her life in the arena under the firmament, he basically becomes enraged because she pretty much ditches him. She leaves like this handkerchief. There's a lot of handkerchief symbolism in this movie as well. We all know what the handkerchiefs mean, right? This is what the elite keep as mementos after they abuse children. They keep a handkerchief. And so there's multiple instances of this. Snow carries a handkerchief from his mother and gives it to Lucy. And then he uses a handkerchief that he wiped Lucy's face with to drop into the snake pit so the snakes would be accustomed to her scent and would not attack her. So, what else is going on here? Well, she leaves behind the gift that Snow gave to her from his mother, and underneath it is a snake, and it bites him, but he is not killed by the snake. And so he becomes enraged that she ditched him, and then he goes to the dark side. Watch.
Now I know the whole world is an arena. To remind us all who we truly are. And we need the Hunger Games. Every year.
And who are you, do you determine?
The victor.
Welcome home, Mr. Snow.
So, let's recap. We have the arena firmament. We have Eve. We have Lucifer. We have all the watchers, which are the spectators. We have the 12 tributes, which are the 12 tribes. We have the fiery serpents, which is the false rainbow, which is the punishment. And why were they punished? Why were the 12 tribes punished? They were punished for wanting to go back to Egypt, for wanting to go back to the capital after God had saved them through the Exodus. So, Egypt versus the wilderness. Now, what is the hunger aspect to this? We're just relating all this back to the Bible and we're summarizing at this point. The hunger aspect has to be the manna. Right? The manna. And then and what is that represented? It's the rat poison. So they turned the manna into rat poison in the story, which is this powdery substance that she has in her compact, remember? So the poison, bleeding clots. We also have the rabies and flu aspect to this. The speck in the beam in the eye, as well as subterranean portals to hell. Wow. We also had the original form of the serpent with feathers and a voice. Heaven's musician. So ultimately what we were watching there in the Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Serpents, it was a love story. Lucifer and Eve. And ultimately they want you to have sympathy for the devil. That all this came about because he was rejected by Eve. This is what the true nature of this is. Now, I looked up this rainbowing effect because it has become apparent that it will become a central theme going into these last days. The rainbowing effect is called thin film interference. This is it right here. It's what leaves it's the sheen that's on top of water that has a thin coat of oil on top. This is the false rainbow. Okay, you can see it here. You also see this on bubbles. When you blow bubbles, you'll see this rainbowing effect. Now, what causes this rainbowing effect? It is light. It is light and structure. There is no color in it. There's no pigment in it, which makes it a false color. It's all done with structure and light. So in other words, light comes in, bounces around. Here's a good diagram of it right here. It's called structural color. It's the false rainbow. And the Bible says that the serpent shall transform himself into an angel of light. And so this has to be what this means. Because this is what happens when you take the black goo. This is why the scarab beetle is so important to the enemy. Because it also has this structural color on it. Iridescence. That looks like color, but it's really not. It's false light. It's false color. Wow, right? So, here's some really good images of it here on the pavement. And what that is again, it's an oil slick. And the structure within the oil, the thin film of oil, basically radiates back light out that looks like a rainbow. Now, tomorrow, we are going to go back to the future in a 1988 film called Biggles. And it's a time travel movie about Gemini twin time travelers who go back in time to disable a frequency weapon that turns steel into dust. And yes, they mention the number 9/11. 13 years before 9/11, where twin buildings were turned into dust. And I couldn't believe it. I know we've been talking about it, but I have a full decode on that for you tomorrow. And then day after tomorrow, we're going to look at Leave the World Behind, a brand new movie that just came out with a bunch of top stars and a very dark theme. And in fact, they predicted or programmed the death of Matthew Perry, who had not died yet. Yet the TV series Friends is a central theme throughout the movie, which of course was filmed and released before he died. One of the actresses who actually talks about Friends throughout the movie, her birthday is one day before Matthew Perry actually died. There's also automated or automatic driverless car accident programming, which we also saw before it happened in the Rainbow Bridge accident, where either the accelerator pedal got stuck or there was some kind of driverless error which caused it to climb at speeds up to over 100 miles per hour and fly through the air. So lots of stuff on deck. Now, a couple follow-ups on the Honey Milk Ranch for those of you that stuck around for today's show. I got Scott, I found some benches on YouTube, and I was like, man, I want to build these benches. They're 2x6, made out of all 2x6 boards, and apparently 4 2x6 boards, which literally cost like $30, you can create a bench out of it. So I showed the video to Scott, and he went back to his workshop and he made these benches for me. So I can't wait to show you that. And I'll try to link you the video at some point. Maybe I'll put it in the pinned comment for those. Well, I'll wait till I, record it for you guys, and then I'll do a separate show on that. But anyway, I got some benches for around the fire pit, so it looks really nice now. Also, I'll tell you a funny story. One of my neighbors brought by a target for my crossbow, and now I have to tell him, I have to admit, he did tell me, he's like, you're going to want to put a bale of hay behind this. And I was like, all right. So I'm like, I set the thing up and I'm like, well, I'm going to try to sight in this bow at 50 yards because I already had it sighted in at 20 yards, but I wanted to get better accuracy on it. So I counted off 50 yards and I stuck the target in front of this tree stump, right? Speaking of tree stumps, we're always talking about tree stumps, right? So I stuck this target, and this thing's pretty thick. It's almost 2 feet thick, but it's foam. It's a foam target, and it's a pretty big foam target. I think it's probably 2 or 3 feet across in each direction. So I stuck this target in front of the stump, and I counted off 50 yards, which put me right up outside my sliding glass doors, for those of you that remember what the ranch looks like. So it's like perfect. So I had like a little perch. I could rest my hand on there and try to get as accurate as a shot as I could from 50 yards. And for those of you that know about crossbows and stuff, that's a pretty good shot. If you can be accurate within 50 yards, that's about as good as you're going to get, right? Anything past that, you can't really be accurate. Anyway, I set up this target and I shot, and it took me a minute and a little bit of adjustment on the scope, but I'm now accurate up to 50 yards. It took me about 6 or 7 arrows, well, about 8 arrows to get it. And I can group those arrows within about 9 to 10 inches of one another from 50 yards with the crossbow. So now, if for those of you that know Arkansas and the wilderness up here, there are very few places where you're even going to have a line of sight of 50 yards. Most shots are within, 20, 25 yards at the outside, because the woods are pretty thick here. But it's always good to be accurate as far as you can, right? Anyway, long story short, here's the funny part of the story. I'm at like my 9th or 10th arrow, and I've got this thing dialed in, and I'm all happy. I walk down to the target, and guess what happened? Let's see who can guess what happened. Good morning, everybody. So there's 9 or 10 arrows in the target, okay? None of them missed the target, which was cool. But some of them were like on the outside of it. But guess what happened? Oh boy. Well, let's see who can guess what happened. Yep, Dove got it. All of the arrows were stuck in the tree behind the target. I was like, oh no. So I'm pulling on these arrows, right? And of course, I break off every single one except there were like 2 or 3 that I could save. And I was so mad at myself because my neighbor told me put a bale of hay behind it, but I didn't have a bale of hay. So I just went for it. And those arrows were so deep into the trunk that I could not get them out. So anyway, that's a funny story. What else is going on out here? Well, I'll just do some filming. Right now, the weather's kind of crappy. It rained all night and it's cold. Most of the leaves are off the trees. But it's still beautiful out here. You know, I love this time of year. All times of year all the times of the year are beautiful out here, in my opinion. But yeah, I've got to get some footage for you guys and give you guys an update. All right. Well, that's about it. Anything else, you guys, before we pop off of here? Yeah, broke most of my arrows off. Now I got about 6 or 7 arrows left, and that's fine. I mean, arrows aren't that expensive. I think I paid like $20 for like 15 arrows or something. And that's including the head on it. All right. Looks like it's cold and rainy where you guys are at. I think they said that it actually snowed north of here, up in Springfield, which isn't too far. Springfield's only a couple hours away from me. I'm like on this weird line where it's pretty much the south here. This is the south. Even though I'm up at a pretty higher elevation, the snows come much later in the year. We get an extra probably, I don't know, 3 weeks or a month of relatively good weather before the snow hits, you know. And there's not much snow here. It's like maybe 3 to 6 inches a year. The bigger thing we have is ice. Sometimes we'll get an ice storm, and that'll stop everything. But anyways, look like we have some late risers this morning. Yeah, Mark's in Missouri and he got snow. And see, I'm just south of the Missouri border and no snow here. Not even close. I think it was probably in the 40s. Yeah. Wow, 26 degrees in Oregon right now, but clear, says Nessa. All right. Oh, I got the bird feeder. I got some I guess they're called striped sunflower seeds. They're really big, and the birds just love them. I fill up these feeders, are already empty. I got to fill them again. So I'll show you guys the bird feeders, and you can get so close to some of these birds. You know, you can walk right up on the feeder, and the chickadees, they'll be within 5 feet of you, and they're not scared. So I thought that was cool. So I'll show you guys that as well. All right. Henrik says it's below freezing in southern Sweden. Chili says outside it's painfully cold. California mountains. Yeah, these deer are smart. They pretty much disappear. Now they'll come at night. Like I catch them all night long. They're at the feeder or down here, literally 50 yards from my house, down in this flat area down there. But they have not come out during the day, and that's because it's still hunting season. I'm sure that as the weather gets colder and the food gets scarcer, they'll be walking around during the day. But deer are nocturnal animals. They don't really come out during the day unless it's certain times of the year, dead of winter. Looks like it's raining in Florida. Thanks, Sammy. 43 in West Tennessee. Lori says the birds like your handsome face. I just think they love that I'm feeding them. Yeah, that was weird. We started the show and a bird ran right in the window, and then it like hung out for a bit, and it like landed on the window on the screen and was just sitting there. So, I don't know, maybe she wanted to get in. It was warm in here. Who knows? Hope she's okay. I'll go out and check on her. But she hit pretty hard. It's one bad thing about having lots of windows is you'll get animals run into them. All right. Okay, you guys. Well, I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, everybody, for showing up. Tomorrow will be Biggles. Let me show you the Wikipedia page on this. Unreal. Biggles. All right, you guys. Have a great rest of your day. Take care and be safe.